You were so good at being good. You knew exactly what to say, when to smile, when to hold it together. And somewhere along the way, you stopped noticing that you were performing. Because the performance worked. People loved you for it. Or at least, they loved the version of you that showed up. But here's the thing that's been sitting quietly underneath all of that. The praise wasn't for you. It was for how well you hid yourself. Think about the child who never threw tantrums, who comforted their parents instead of being comforted, who got called so mature for their age, like it was a compliment. Nobody asked how they learned to be that way so young. In her book, The Drama of the Gifted Child, Alice Miller makes a point that completely reframed how I understand childhood, and honestly, how I understand most adults I've ever known. She argues that the children who were praised the most are often the ones who learned earliest that their real feelings were dangerous to show. Not because anyone told them that directly, but because they were perceptive enough to feel the consequences when they did. This is worth sitting with. We tend to assume that a praised child is a seen child, that love and recognition go together. But Miller draws a different picture, one where the child becomes so attuned to what the parent needs emotionally that they start editing themselves in real time. Feeling sad when the room needs joy? Suppress it. Feeling angry when the room needs calm? Tuck it away. Feeling scared when everyone is counting on you to be strong? You already know what to do with that. And the truly heartbreaking part? This child gets very good at it. So good that the praise starts flowing. You're so responsible. You're so thoughtful. You never make things difficult. And that praise becomes a kind of trap, because now the performance has a reward attached to it. Stopping means losing something. Stopping means becoming someone they might not recognize. So you don't stop. Here's where things get interesting. This pattern doesn't stay in childhood. It follows you. It becomes the blueprint for how you move through every room you enter, every relationship you build. You become extraordinarily skilled at reading what people need from you. And you deliver it, almost automatically, before they've even asked. People find you easy to be around, reliable, low maintenance, a good friend, a good partner, a good employee. What they don't know, what you might not fully know, is that there's an entire interior life that never quite makes it to the surface. Needs that get swallowed before they form into words. Anger that arrives and then immediately apologizes for being there. Grief that you process alone, quietly, because asking someone to hold it with you feels like too much to ask. Think about the last time you said, "I'm fine," and meant something completely different. Not as a lie, exactly. More like a reflex. A translation you've been doing so long you don't even notice you're doing it anymore. That's not emotional maturity. That's survival that outlived its context. Miller describes it as a kind of imprisonment. Not in the dramatic sense, but in the quiet sense of living in a self that has been carefully constructed around what others can tolerate. And the cruel twist is that the people who built this self are usually not monsters. They were often loving, well-meaning, sometimes struggling. That almost makes it harder to name, because you can't point to a villain. You can only notice, slowly, that somewhere between all that love and all that praise, you got a little lost. If you've ever felt a strange grief you couldn't quite explain, not sadness about something that happened, more like sadness about something that never got the chance to happen. The version of you that maybe could have existed if you hadn't learned so early to make yourself small enough to be loved. That grief has no clean name, but it's real, and it's worth taking seriously. If this just put words to something you've been carrying quietly for a long time, that's exactly why this channel exists. One book, one honest conversation, every week. Stay with me. So where does that leave us? Because recognizing the pattern is one thing, living differently is another. And this is where I think a lot of people get stuck. They see the performance, they're tired of it, but they don't know who they are without it. The mask and the face have been touching for so long that they've started to merge. This is exactly what Miller was pointing at when she talked about the true self and the false self. Not that we are fake people, but that many of us developed a public self so early and reinforced it so consistently that accessing anything beneath it feels almost frightening. Like opening a door you've kept closed for years and not knowing what's on the other side. Here's a thought experiment. Imagine you're in a conversation with someone you trust, and for one moment, instead of translating your feelings into something more acceptable, You just said the actual thing. The unfiltered thing, the thing you usually catch before it leaves your mouth. What do you imagine would happen? And more importantly, why is your first instinct to assume it would go badly? That instinct is data. It tells you something about when you learned it wasn't safe. The path forward, and I want to be careful here, because there's no neat resolution to something this deep. But the path forward seems to start with something almost embarrassingly simple: noticing. Just noticing when you're editing. When you feel one thing and say another. When a need arises and you immediately talk yourself out of having it, you don't have to fix it all at once. You don't have to suddenly become someone who shows every feeling to every person. But you could start to be curious about what's actually there. Because here's what I believe, and what I think Miller's work quietly argues across every page. The feelings you learned to hide were never the problem. They were the most honest parts of you. They were the signals, the aliveness, and a life spent managing them, suppressing them, performing around them. That's not a life that feels like yours. You deserve a life that feels like yours. So here's what I want to leave you with. If you were the child who was praised for being easy, for being mature, for never making things hard, what would it mean to finally let yourself be a little difficult? Not destructive, not unkind, just honest, just real, just present in the way that actual human beings are present, with needs and limits and feelings that don't always arrive at convenient times. What would it cost you to show up like that, and what has it cost you not to? The Drama of the Gifted Child by Alice Miller is quiet, precise, and one of the most honest books I've ever read about why so many of us feel like strangers to ourselves. If this conversation moved something in you, it's worth your time. The most praised child in the room is still in there somewhere, wondering if it's finally safe to come out.